4 Hours in Sangam, Madras. A historical podcast narrative. Sangam era, AD 200, month of Karthigai. Narrator introduction. Close your eyes. The year is AD 200. The place the world will one day call Madras, and then Chennai, does not yet carry those names. It is known simply as Madarasapattinam. A fishing settlement. A coastal trading post. A living, breathing community where the Cooum river curves toward the Bay of Bengal, and the northeast wind blows clean and cold off the open sea. There is no Fort St. George here. No Marina promenade. No Salai. What there is life. Ancient, essential, unhurried life. Boats pulled up on white sand. Salt fires burning through the night. The smell of jasmine and dried fish and fresh bronze. A drum announcing the morning. A child talking to a boat. Over the next 24 hours, you will meet 24 people. A fisherman who mends nets at midnight. A woman who reads tomorrow's sea in tonight's water. A pearl diver who breathes deeper than most people dare. A young girl composing her first poem without knowing it is a poem. You do not need to remember all their names. You only need to listen. This is Sangam, Madras. It is not yet a city, but it already has a soul. Come. Chapter 1, Midnight, the man who mends nets. It is midnight. The beach at Madarasapattinam is quiet, or rather, it has that particular quiet that is not silence, but simply the absence of human voices. The sea is very much awake. The northeast wind blows steady and cool. The stars above are brilliant. Murugesan is on the beach. He is 58 years old, a fisherman since childhood, and he is sitting cross-legged on the dry sand above the tide line, a large fishing net spread across his lap, mending it by the light of a clay lamp. His hands do not need the light. They have done this 10,000 times. Each finger finds the broken strand by touch, loops the new fiber through, knots it with 3 precise movements. He hums as he works, not a real song, just a low, rhythmic sound that means his mind is calm and his hands are right. The net tore yesterday morning on a submerged rock. If it goes out tomorrow with that gap, the fish swim straight through it. So here he is, at midnight, under the stars, doing what needs to be done. His son Selvam, 19 years old, appears out of the darkness and sits beside him without a word. He picks up the other end of the net and works from that side. 2 men, 1 lamp, the sound of the sea. They meet in the middle. The last knot holds firm. Murugesan looks at his son. Sleep, he says. We leave at 4. Selvam nods and disappears back into the dark. Murugesan rolls the repaired net carefully, sets it with the boat gear, and stays on the beach a little longer, looking at the sea. He always stays a little longer. The sea is the only thing he knows that is always itself. Chapter 2, 1 in the morning, the woman who reads the sea. On the far northern edge of the beach, where the river meets the ocean and the sand narrows to almost nothing, Neithal Maayi is awake and watching the water. She is 65 years old. In a fishing community where the sea takes the young without mercy, 65 is ancient. She is lean and straight-backed, white-haired, wearing her cotton sari tucked high at the knee. She sits at the very edge of the river mouth where fresh water meets the incoming tide, and she is doing something her community, has trusted for decades. She is reading the sea. Reading the sea is not a figure of speech. It is a skill built from a lifetime of observation, the color of the water at night, the way the phosphorescent glow behaves in the breaking waves, the direction and spacing of the swells, the sound the surf makes at different points along the coast. Together these tell you what the sea will do for the next 12 to 24 hours. Tonight she sees a slight shift in the swell direction. The waves are arriving from a degree or two further north than yesterday. She traces a line in the wet sand with one finger, marking the angle, then smooths it away. In her mind she has already decided which boats should go north, which should go south, which should go deep and which should stay close. She will tell the men in the morning. They will listen. A sea turtle climbs the beach 20 feet from where she sits, moving with the slow dignity of something very old doing something it has always done. Neithal watches without moving, then quietly shifts her lamp so the light does not disturb the nesting. She knows what the turtle means. When the turtles nest, the sea is settling. Tomorrow will be a good day. Chapter 3, 2 in the morning, the diver who breathes like water. Muththu Vaan Selvan cannot sleep before a dive day. He never has been able to. He is 24 years old, and he is the best pearl diver in the settlement, not by title, but by demonstrated ability. He can hold his breath for 3.5 minutes. He can dive to 30 feet on a single lungful of air. He can surface carrying 3 or 4 oysters per dive without rushing, without panic, without wasting a single heartbeat. At 2 in the morning, he sits in the doorway of his house on the beach lane, oiling his body slowly and carefully with a mixture of sesame and fish oil. The oil forms a thin layer against the cold of deep water. He works from the shoulders down, paying special attention to the joints where the cold enters first. As he works, he breathes. Deliberately. Slowly. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 8. The breath is his most essential tool. It is the only equipment that matters. Everything else, the flat stone he grips to pull himself down fast, the fiber bag worn around his neck for oysters, the short knife at his hip, everything else is secondary to the breath. The pearl beds he works are half a mile offshore, along a submerged reef to the south. The pearls here are not the famous ones of Karthigai, the great pearl port of the Pandya queens. But they are real, and every season brings a handful good enough to trade. He finishes oiling, braids his hair tight against his head, and lies down on his mat. He will not sleep. He knows this. But he will rest, and breathe, and let his body gather what it needs for the morning. Chapter 4, 3 in the morning, the man who tends 6 fires. 300 yards inland from the beach, in the shallow brackish flats where seawater seeps in from the tides, Uppu Aavi Rajan is walking a slow circle around 6 large clay cauldrons, each one over its own fire, each one boiling concentrated salt water into crystals. He is 41 years old, compact, permanently glazed with sweat even in the cool Karthigai night. He is the night fire tender for his family's salt operation. The fires cannot go out. The temperature cannot vary too much in either direction. Too hot and the salt scorches and turns bitter. Too cool and the crystallization stops. He has no thermometer. He reads the fire with his hand held near the surface, with his nose reading the steam, with the color of the flame in the darkness. The northeast wind helps tonight. The cauldrons breathe well. 6 columns of steam rise and the wind immediately tears them apart. Salt is not a luxury. Salt is life. Every household in every village in the Tamil country needs it for preserving food, for cooking, for trade. The salt makers of the coast supply an entire world. Rajan knows this, and he carries the knowledge like ballast. It does not lift him up, but it keeps him steady. He adds wood to the third fire. It had dipped slightly, and watches the flame climb back to its right height. He nods. Moves on. The circuit continues. It will continue until dawn. Chapter 5, 4 in the morning, the priest and the sleeping goddess. The Shore Temple at Madarasapattinam is a small stone shrine at the northern end of the beach, not grand, not ancient yet, but already carrying several generations of prayer in its walls. The deity inside is a form of Shiva facing the sea, as if watching the horizon for something the priests cannot name. Aadhimoolam Pandithar wakes at 3:45, bathes in the well beside the temple, dresses in fresh white cloth, and stands at the temple door at exactly 4 in the morning. He is 50 years old and has been the sole priest here for 22 years. His body knows this schedule better than his mind does. He lights the ghee lamps one by one, 9 of them, arranged in their specific positions. The deity's carved stone form emerges from the darkness as the light grows, as if arriving, as if choosing to appear rather than simply being revealed. The inner sanctum smells of camphor, old stone, and the sea air that finds its way through every gap. He begins his recitation. Sanskrit verses, old and precise, their meaning living in the sound as much as in the words. The sea outside rolls on. The stars are still fully present. The fishing boats are not yet visible on the water, but he knows they are being readied even now. He adds the fisherman's safety to his prayers without pausing in the formal verses. A private edition he has made every morning for 22 years. Outside, the settlement sleeps. In here, a small fire of attention has been lit and will burn all day. Chapter 6, 5 in the morning, the young steersman faces the sea. 5 boats launch from the beach in the hour before dawn. Arumbu Kaalai Velan is 22 years old, and this morning he holds the steering oar for the first time, as the designated steersman of his boat. The captain assigned him this role yesterday afternoon. He has been thinking about it since. The launch is collective and physical, and has not changed in 500 years on this coast. All crew waist deep in the water, pushing against the hull as the prow meets the incoming waves. The surf is moderate this morning. The swell is long and well spaced. Neithal Maayi read it correctly, as she always does. The boat goes through 3 waves cleanly. Then oars out. 4 men rowing in the long, deep strokes that move a heavy plank boat through open water. The beach recedes. The shore temple's lamp shrinks to a single orange point. Arumbu holds the steering oar and feels the current press against it. He reads the boat's movement through his hands and through his body, the way all good steersmen do, not thinking about it but feeling it. The sky to the east is beginning to show the first idea of light. Not dawn yet, but the sky's agreement that dawn is coming. The stars are still present. The sea around the boat is dark and enormous. Arumbu is not afraid. He was born within hearing of this sea. It is his element. What he feels now, in the dark, with the oar in his hands and the water pressing back, is not fear. It is something much closer to reverence. Chapter 7, 6 in the morning, the Salt Man and the first light market. A mile inland from the beach, where the coastal sand gives way to proper village soil, the morning market opens at dawn. Thenavan Uppu Vaniga, 45 years old, arrived before the light. He does this every day. His position is near the center of the lane, a wooden platform over 2 flat stones, carrying 6 large sealed clay pots of salt and 6 open baskets where customers can see the product and touch it before buying. The salt is white, fine-grained, and carries the slight mineral smell that marks it as genuine coastal salt, not the inferior rock salt that sometimes drifts in from inland traders. As the sky lightens, the first customers arrive. A cook from a merchant household, a woman who preserves fish and needs the coarser grade, a farmer's wife paying with rice from a bag balanced on her head. Each transaction is quick, measured, and conducted in the low, serious voice of people doing the day's important work before the heat comes. The market at first light has its own quality. People still soft from sleep. Transactions quiet. The air cool and clear. The first birds beginning their commentary in the scrub trees along the lane's edge. By 7 in the morning this will be louder, faster, more complicated. But right now, at dawn, it has the purity of essential things. Chapter 8. 7 in the morning, the bronze caster's pour. The bronze caster's workshop is the loudest place in the settlement at 7 in the morning. 2 furnaces burning. The sound of bellows. The smell of hot metal and the sweet charcoal of specific hardwoods. The hammering. Caravanan Aruku Sivan, 44 years old, has been at his workshop since 5:30. He is casting 10 identical oil lamps for the settlement's Karthigai festival, one set from one original wax mold, so they come out identical in weight and proportion and finish. The process at this stage means clay-encased wax models in the furnace, the wax melting out, leaving the empty clay mold. Then comes the pour, liquid bronze in a clay ladle, poured into the mold in a single continuous 8-second flow. The metal must be exactly the right temperature. Dull red is too cold, white bright is too hot, bright orange is right. Both apprentices stop when the pour begins. Everyone stops. The workshop goes silent around Caravanan as he lifts the ladle with both hands wrapped in thick cloth rags. The bronze glows. He pours. 8 seconds. He sets the ladle down. He does not check the mold immediately. He waits 30 seconds, breathing. Then he checks. 1. Good. 9 more to go. Chapter 9, 8 in the morning, the drum that speaks to the settlement. The Parai drum is the heartbeat of the Tamil coastal community. It is a large, flat drum of fired clay and stretched hide, beaten with a curved stick, and its sound carries further than almost any other instrument, across water, through wind, through walls, across the entire settlement in one clear stroke. Karupan is 35 years old, the settlement's hereditary Parai drummer, and at 8 in the morning he performs the daily ritual announcement at the 4 cardinal points of the settlement. He begins at the shore, facing east. The rhythm he plays is not random. It is a specific traditional sequence that every person in this settlement knows from childhood. The morning rhythm, the one that says the sea is calm, the boats are out, the day begins in peace. Different rhythms carry different messages. A child born on this coast learns the drum language before it learns to walk. He moves through the settlement, east to north, north to west, west to south. His stick moves with the fluid ease of a man who has played since he was 7. The drum rides on a cord around his neck. The sound fills every lane. Children stop to listen. A dog barks once and falls silent. A woman pausing to pour water from a pot tilts her head, recognizes the morning rhythm, and resumes pouring. An old man on a veranda closes his eyes and nods. Karupan returns to the shore, faces the sea, plays the closing sequence, a long, complex roll that diminishes gradually over 2 minutes, until the sound becomes inaudible. He stands still after. The northeast wind carries the last vibrations out across the water. He nods to the sea. The sea does not nod back. He is not offended. It is busy. Chapter 10, 9 in the morning, the merchant from inland. He arrived yesterday from a market town 2 days' travel west, and he is staying in the small caravanserai on the settlement's western edge, a long brick building with a covered courtyard, where his bullock cart and 8 bales of goods are secured. Vanagan Periyang Manaka Nadar is 48 years old, and he is the kind of merchant who calculates while sleeping. He came here for salt, dried fish, and possibly pearls, and he moves through the morning market with the practiced eye of a professional buyer, touching the salt to feel its grade, noting which dried fish have been properly cured and which have not, asking oblique questions about pearl availability without appearing specifically interested. He wears good Madurai cotton. He carries a fine bronze measure in his bag. He moves with the unhurried confidence of someone who knows that the best prices are paid to those who appear to need nothing urgently. He has already identified the best salt trader. He has already noted the bronze caster's new lamp batch. Festival season demand inland will be high. He is building a transaction list in his practiced memory that he will begin executing after 10, when the market reaches its full volume and the social moment for serious negotiation has arrived. He stops at a food stall, eats a quick breakfast of rice porridge with dried fish and coastal lime, standing up, watching the market as he chews, missing nothing. Chapter 11, 10 in the morning, the dancer and the sea wind. Under the great rain tree beside the shore temple, its canopy spreading 40 feet in every direction, the roof of green and shade, Kanaji Adalamuda is 30 minutes into her morning dance practice. She is 21 years old, trained in the Sadir tradition of classical temple dance since she was 6. She moves in the way of dancers who have practiced so long that the body has become the instrument, every muscle available to intention, every gesture precise and fully inhabited. Her ankle bells ring in the sea wind. The old woman who is her guru sits at the base of the tree, tapping a small hand drum, watching everything. Today's practice is the Neithal set, the sea landscape mood, its themes of waiting and longing and the patient endurance of the shore. The Karthigai festival is 3 days away, and Kanaji will perform a 3-hour program in the temple's outer courtyard, before the sea, in evening light. Her guru speaks once every 10 minutes. A word. A tap of the drum to indicate timing. Today, at 25 minutes past 10, she says simply, the hand is arriving before the eyes. Kanaji adjusts. The hands and eyes find their timing. The gesture becomes what it was meant to be, not a physical movement, but a meaning made visible. The sea wind moves through the rain tree. Shadows shift across the dance floor. The ankle bells ring and ring and ring. Chapter 12, 11 in the morning, the boat builder's secret. On the upper beach, log shelter accumulated over 30 years into its own kind of permanence, Thambidurai is building a boat. He is 62 years old and has been building boats since he was 14. He builds without drawings or measurements. The design is in his body, learned so deeply it cannot be extracted into words. When a young man once asked him how he knew the correct curve for a plank, he held up his hand, traced the curve in the air, and said simply, "Like this." The boat under construction is a commission for a coastal merchant, longer than a fishing lam, broader in the beam, built to carry goods above wave spray. 3 weeks of work so far. 3 more weeks to go. At 11 in the morning he is working the keel plank with a large curved adze, shaping the slight rocker that allows the boat to pivot and steer. Each stroke of the adze removes a thin curl of jackfruit, wood that falls to the beach in a growing pile. Every 10 strokes he reads the surface with his hand, feeling for the curve's progress the way a blind man reads a face. His secret, never spoken, known to no other builder in this settlement, is a specific ratio of curve to length that he worked out over decades by observing how his boats handled compared to others on this coast. He does not know how to express it in numbers. He knows it as a feeling. The fresh jackfruit wood smells sharp and faintly sweet in the late morning air. Chapter 13, Noon, the rice merchant and the young man alone. The settlement at noon is in that paradox of maximum market activity and residential quiet. The fishermen are back from the sea. The tradespeople who opened at dawn are eating or resting. The market itself is at its commercial peak. Nalathambi is 50 years old, the primary rice grain trader, and at noon his stall is a small commercial universe. Rice arrives from the paddy villages 10 to 15 miles inland, bought in bulk, ox-carted in, stored in earthen bins, sold daily in measured portions. Today's noon crowd: a household cook buying for the week, a fisherwoman trading dried fish directly for rice at an agreed rate, 2 women doing weekly provisions, and a young man, unmarried, newly living alone, who needs guidance on how much to buy. Nalathambi serves all 4 simultaneously, with the calm efficiency of long experience. He talks quality with the cook, confirms the exchange rate with the fisherwoman, reminds the household women about the volume discount, and turns to the young man last, quietly, 2 naji per day for 1 person. Start with 10 days worth. Come back when you know if that's right. The young man nods. Grateful. Nalathambi has given that same advice to new young householders for 20 years. It is always exactly right. Chapter 14, 1 in the afternoon, the catch comes home. The boats return in the early afternoon. By 1 o'clock the beach is organized activity, baskets of fish being carried up from the waterline, the bronze scale set on its post, the catch being sorted and weighed. Chella, 34 years old, manages her household side of the catch transaction, with the authority of someone who has been doing this since she was 19. She is the boat captain's wife. He manages the sea. She manages the shore. The division has been in place since before both of them could name it. She stands at the weighing area and evaluates everything quickly: what goes to market today, what gets salted for preservation, what the household eats tonight. 2 fish traders appear from the market side, and she negotiates with both of them in parallel, quantities, prices, terms, in the quick, quiet shorthand of people who have done this many times and know the fair price without needing to argue about it. Her 8-year-old son has attached himself to her leg. He wants to see the fish, She holds up one of the morning's sea bass without interrupting her negotiation. Big, the boy says. Yes, she agrees, and continues talking to the trader. Chapter 15, 2 in the afternoon, the scholar and the sea. He leave. He did not plan to stop here. He is a traveling Sanskrit scholar heading north from the Chidambaram temple, carrying an enormous bundle of manuscripts. He stopped for water 4 days ago. He is still here. Vedanajam Shastri is 40 years old, lean from months of travel, and he is sitting on the beach below the shore temple at 2 in the afternoon with a palm leaf manuscript open across his knees, making notes in the margin while the northeast wind keeps trying to turn the pages. He pins the far edge with a smooth pebble. He has learned to negotiate with wind. He is reconstructing a damaged Sanskrit grammar text, scholarly detective work, filling gaps from memory and inference where the original is erased. He is very good at this. The shore temple priest has been bringing him interpretive questions every morning. He answers them with the patient pleasure of someone who loves their subject above all other things. But what has kept him here for 4 days is not the manuscript. It is the sea. He grew up in the Kaveri Delta, river country. He has never lived beside the ocean before, and the ocean, its scale, its sound, its combination of absolute permanence and constant motion, has caught something in him he cannot quite name or release. He sits here every afternoon and works, because the sea improves his thinking. He has told no one this. He says he is here for the manuscripts. The manuscripts are true. But they are not the whole truth. Chapter 16, 3 in the afternoon, the child who talks to boats. At 3 in the afternoon, the beach belongs to the children. The fishing boats are pulled up on the upper beach. The adults are resting. The sea in this hour has its afternoon mood, the northeast swell lighter, the waves smaller and more playful. 6 children between 6 and 11 years old are playing a game with rules entirely of their own invention. Avindan, 9 years old, is not playing. He is sitting in the prow of his father's boat, talking to it. The boat's name is Vaigai Kuyil, scratched into the bow timber by his grandfather. Avindan calls it Kuyil, and he talks to it about the things on his mind. The turtle Neithal Maayi found last night, the morning's fish catch, his plans for tomorrow, the color of the sea at this specific hour. The other children leave him to it. He is considered a little unusual, but well liked, and his eccentricity does not prevent him from being the fastest runner among them. At 3:30, the boat builder Thambijarai passes by and notices the child. He stops, watches for a moment, then says, "What does she say?" Avindan looks up without surprise. She says the sea will be rougher tomorrow afternoon. Thambijarai looks at the water, considers, nods. Probably true, he says, and walks on. He does not ask how the child knows this. On this coast, some knowledge arrives from places that cannot be explained. You accept it or you don't, and the wise ones have learned to accept it. Chapter 17, 4 in the afternoon, the woman who sells what makes homes beautiful. The evening market assembles around 3:30, and reaches its peak between 4 and 6. Among the fish traders and grain sellers and salt merchants, Paramalam's stall is unmistakable. A platform fragrant with jasmine, marigold, lotus buds, and the dry spicewood smell of incense bundles stacked in every grade. Paramalam is 37 years old. She sources her flowers from inland garden villages, and her incense from the mountain spice roots that feed into the coastal trade. In Karthigai month, when every household lights rows of oil lamps for the great festival, demand for flowers and incense is at its yearly peak. She prepared for this. Today her stock is 3 times a normal evening. The evening crowd has the energy of people whose primary work is done and who are now buying for pleasure and comfort and beauty rather than strict need. They move more slowly. They linger. They smell the jasmine and pick up the incense and ask her opinion about what combinations work for which occasion. She answers all of it with warmth and expertise. She knows which flowers last longest in the coastal heat. She knows whose daughter's wedding is coming. She knows who is marking a death and needs white flowers, and who is celebrating a birth and wants yellow. By 4:30 the stall is surrounded. She is working fast, wrapping, counting, reaching, making change with one hand while selecting stock with the other. The smell of jasmine and camphor, and salt air together, is the particular perfume of this coast at this hour. There is no other smell quite like it anywhere. Chapter 18, 5 in the afternoon, the potter and the 500 lamps. In the potter's street, Kalyani is finishing the largest single commission of her year. 500 small clay oil lamps for the Karthigai festival. Due in 3 days. She has been at this for 2 weeks. The Karthigai lamp is a specific form, a small cup with a flat base and a short pointed spout for the wick, that must be made in large quantities with consistent proportions. Kalyani throws them on her wheel in batches of 20, each lamp taking approximately 40 seconds from clay lump to finished form. Her daughter Kavitha, 17, works beside her on a second wheel. They work in near silence, 2 wheels spinning their separate rhythms, the clay taking shape under practiced hands. At 5 o'clock the afternoon light comes through the workshop's western window at a low angle, making the wet clay gleam like silver. Kalyani notices this the way she notices all beautiful things about her craft, without stopping, without comment, as a continuous background experience of working with this material in this light. 460, her daughter says, counting the lamps cooling on the drying shelf. 40 more, Kalyani says. Tonight, Kalyani says. The wheel keeps spinning. Chapter 19, 6 in the evening, the Veena player and the sunset sea. The Karthigai sunset over the Bay of Bengal is not a quiet thing. The sky turns deep orange, then rose, then purple, and the sea below reflects all of it in broken, shifting patterns as the northeast swell catches and scatters the light. Every household in the settlement begins lighting its evening lamps. The shore temple's puja bells ring. The smell of camphor spreads down the lanes. In this hour, Vijayan plays. He is 32 years old, a Veena player without a court patron, who came here 6 months ago following a commission that materialized and then simply stayed, because the sea agreed with him. He sits on the upper beach at 6 in the evening, facing the water, and plays the evening raga, the Sondhya Pan, the Sangamira melodic mode for the closing of the day, for the transition between one kind of time and another. The northeast wind bends his music slightly. The sound reaches listeners with a quality of distance even when he is close. A small crowd gathers informally, without announcement. The Sanskrit scholar sits on the sand nearby with his manuscript closed, the flower seller passes, and slows without stopping. The child Aravindan stands 20 feet away with the absolute stillness that music creates in certain. The Venus sings into the sunset. The sea has no opinion. But it does not object. Chapter 20, 7 in the evening, the girl and the poem she doesn't know she's writing. Night-blooming jasmine opens along the lane between the weaver's quarter and the fisher family's houses. At 7 in the evening in Karthigai, the smell is overwhelming, white flowers and salt air and cooking smoke and the last warmth of stone walls releasing the day's heat. Selvi Kadalpavai is 18 years old, and she is standing at the threshold of her family's house ostensibly filling the evening lamp with oil. Actually, she is standing at the threshold because the house directly across the narrow lane has a light in its upper room and a shadow moving in it that she has been thinking about since the bonding festival 2 months ago. The shadow belongs to Rajorajan, 20 years old, a salt-maker's son apprenticed to the bronze caster, whose voice she heard singing during the festival, and has not fully forgotten. They have not spoken. The lane is narrow and the community is watchful, and neither of them has found the occasion or the courage. So she stands with her oil lamp and the jasmine blooms, and she is doing something she does not recognize as poetry, composing, in her mind, the image of a bird that flies between the sea and the shore, never landing, carrying something it cannot put down. This is the Neithal Maayi. The seashore mood. The ache of nearness without arrival. It has been described in Tamil poetry for 500 years before she was born. She does not know this. She is simply feeling something too large for silence. Her mother calls from inside. Goes in, carrying the lamp. The jasmine blooms on without her. Chapter 21, 8 in the evening, the doctor who listens. His house is set slightly apart from the main settlement, on the inland side, near the coastal scrub where the specific medicinal plants grow. He is findable without being constantly surrounded. The medicine man needs quiet. Is 60 years old, a practitioner of the Siddha tradition with 3 generations of coastal-specific knowledge added to it. The healing properties of sea plants, the treatment of pearl divers' pressure injuries, the management of sun sickness in people who spend their lives exposed to sky and salt water. At 8 in the evening his patient is the young pearl diver, Muththu, who has arrived with deep ear pain, pressure built up from the day's repeated deep dives. This is a common complaint among divers, and, if ignored, it leads to permanent damage. Kadal Siddhar examines both ears carefully, pressing on the jaw and behind the ear to map the pressure distribution. He mixes a preparation he has made hundreds of times, neem oil, ginger extract, and a coastal plant he calls Kadal Thumbai, dried and stored in labeled clay jars along his wall. 3 drops in each ear before sleeping, he says. No diving for 2 days. The young diver looks pained at this second instruction. He has a commission waiting. 2 days, the doctor says again, with the quiet finality of someone who has seen the alternative. Muththu nods. He will take the 2 days. Some lessons you learn from watching others. Some you learn from not watching carefully enough. Chapter 22, 9 in the evening, 500 lamps. Tonight is the full moon of Karthigai, the festival of lights. Every house in the settlement places clay lamps along its front threshold, along every lane edge, in every courtyard. 500 lamps, lit from a single first flame, spreading from house to house through the settlement until the entire place glows. Seen from the beach, it looks like the settlement has become a reflection of the star field above it. Orange points of warmth arranged in the rough geometry of human habitation, answering the sky. Veeralakshmi Nambiar, 70 years old, is the matriarch of the largest family cluster in the settlement. 4 households, 3 generations, 17 people. It is her role, her right, to light the first lamp of the festival from her courtyard, from which the other lamps will spread. She sits in the open courtyard as the family assembles. She is small and white-haired, wearing the deep red silk sari she keeps for festival days only. Her wrists carry gold bangles she has worn for 40 years. She takes the fire from the kitchen lamp, which has been burning since morning, and lights the first wick. It takes immediately, the flame steady in the sheltered courtyard. She lights the second from the first. The third from the second. Family helps. Grandchildren lighting grandmother's lamps. Daughters-in-law lighting the threshold row. Within 10 minutes, the courtyard blazes with 80 small flames. The family stands in the lamplight and looks at what they have made together. Nobody speaks for a moment. They don't need to. Chapter 23, 10 in the evening, the watchman and the story. The festival lamps are burning lower. Many households have retired to sleep, leaving the lamps to exhaust their oil and complete their ceremony alone, unobserved. The settlement at 10 in the evening is dark except for these small remaining flames and the full moon of Karthigai pouring silver across the lanes. Sinderason, 47 years old, is the settlement's night watchman. On festival nights his regular rounds include a specific additional task: checking that no unattended lamp has set fire to a thatched roof. This has happened twice in 15 years. Both times contained quickly. But the memory stays fresh enough to make the festival night watch serious work. He moves through the lanes with his staff and his own lamp, checking thatch near ground level festival lights, nudging a lamp away from a wooden post, making notes in his memory about which households have left large fires unattended. At 10:30 he passes the matriarch Veeralakshmi's house and slows. Her window is still lit. He can hear her voice, the rise and fall of a practiced storyteller, the pause before a climax, the small sounds of children responding. He cannot make out. He does not need to. He recognizes the thing itself, the old woman, the lamp, the story, the children gathered close. The most important technology the ancient world possessed. More durable than bronze, more essential than salt. He walks on, tapping his staff. The festival lamps are going out one by one as the oil exhausts. The stars are brilliant, the Pleiades of Karthigai high overhead, clear as a proclamation. The full moon makes shadows. Chapter 24, 11 at night, the sea returns. The festival is done. The settlement is sleeping. The last of the Karthigai lamps have burned out, leaving small clay cups of ash, and the sweet ghost smell of coconut oil across every lane and courtyard. The full moon of Karthigai is high and generous, laying silver across the beach and the water. Murugesan is on the beach again. He came back, as he always does in the deep watch of the night, not to work, the net already mended, but simply because the beach at this hour is the place he belongs. He has lived 58 years on this coast, and the first and last sound of every day has been the sea. He does not know how to think about the world without the sea sound underneath everything. He walks the upper beach slowly. He checks the boats by habit, hull intact, oars in place, nothing disturbed. The sea is active tonight, the full moon pulling the tide, the northeast swell running long and deep. The moonlight on the water makes it look like hammered silver. He rises the northernmost boat and turns. Stands with his face to the sea. The settlement behind him is dark and breathing quiet. The shore temple lamp still burns, the priest never lets it go out. The veena player is somewhere asleep. The pearl diver has his eardrops in and his 2 days of rest ahead of him. The salt fires are burning, attended. The flower seller's Jasmine is packed and cooling for tomorrow. The child Avindan is asleep, probably dreaming of boats that speak. And the scholar is awake. He is always awake at this hour, sitting at his window with the sea sound underneath his thinking, still not quite able to explain to himself why he cannot leave. Murugesan stands with the sea for a long moment. The water moves. The stars turn. The northeast wind continues, as it will for another 2 months, carrying the cold of deep ocean distances across this beach where people have lived and worked and loved and died for a very long time. He turns. Walks up the beach. Goes home to sleep. Tomorrow, 4 o'clock launch. The sea will have its own ideas. It always does. Narrator close. 24 hours. 24 souls. Sangam Madras, Madarasapattinam, AD 200. A fishing settlement on the Bay of Bengal. No fort. No Marina promenade. No grand streets. Just boats and salt fires and jasmine, and bronze lamps and a drum announcing the morning and a child who talks to boats, and an old woman who sends light through 17 members of her family like a thread through a needle. Madras did not begin with a British fort in the year 1639. It began here. With these people. With the sea they lived beside, the salt they made, the lamps they lit in Karthigai, and the stories they told by those lamps to children who grew up and told them again. The Marina beach is still there. The sea is still there. Somewhere in Chennai right now, someone is watching the Bay of Bengal at night and feeling something they cannot quite name. Murugesan would understand. Some threads never break. This has been 24 hours in Sangam, Madras. I am your